Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me again. This is the fourth episode of car sketching, where I'm trying to just give quick tutorials to teach people what I know about drawing. I can tell you this, what I don't know about making YouTube videos is pretty evident in the last one that I did. So thanks everybody for sticking with me. I'll get better. My lighting is not great. I'm in a car starting my day at work, so it's a little limited what I can do here, but I'll try to figure out some things if people are liking and subscribing, and it looks like it's something that there might be an audience for. But anyway, in the first episode, I used this handy little tool that I got on Garrett Wade, and you can use any kind of tool. It could be just like a simple ruler, or even, as I explained in the first episode, you can even take quick measurements with your pencil and just bring them over to the drawing and then just put little marks. So that works too. So the basic measurements have pretty much been done, and now I'm really gonna kind of jump into working on the drawing, and I'll try to tell you as I go along what I'm thinking and why I'm correcting certain things. So thanks everybody for the few of you who have left comments. Big shout out to Dottie. She's a big cheerleader of mine and has been throughout other projects that I've done that have nothing to do with artwork. Anyway, so I'm just going to start defining some muscles here. And as I mentioned too, sort of my style of doing figure drawing is to allow myself to throw in a little bit of shading as I go along, just to kind of hold my own interest. The first thought I had when I looked at this drawing after being away from it for a little while is that it seemed like this part of his butt looked way too big. So I'm gonna give him a little trim. Wow, if only it were that easy in real life. Just lop off a little bit here and just start working with the values. So values meaning the shading. So I'm kind of squinting at this drawing and I'm looking at, wow, the main areas of dark values are here and in this arm. So clearly I need to go a lot darker here, which I'm going to do just quickly. A lot of times what really corrects the values is if you just do this simple hash mark, it's just a diagonal mark across the whole thing after you've done some defining marks, like over here where the muscle is. So it'll just naturally make everything a lot darker, including the area that you were trying to, I don't want to use the word highlight, but call attention to the most shadow. So it's kind of a good method to sort of just drop everything back in one fell swoop, as opposed to trying to just gradually get this part darker than that part, lighter than that part. So it's a good trick. So over here where the model's wrist is, I see that it gets dark again here, and then the drawing is not extremely clear. It would probably help if I had my glasses on, what's going on up here. So I'm not going to pay too much attention to that. I may just throw some shading in here to just sort of make it an unimportant area that the arm drifts into. But this part right here is pretty dark, so I'm going to call that out in my drawing. And I'm just going to leave that for now. I would advise that you never stay in one spot for too long, because what'll happen is the other areas of the drawing will help define the area that you were just on. So if you move around, you can much more easily tell where adjustments need to be made. That's my car light going off, and it's not going to let me keep that light on, so hopefully you guys can see okay. It's a problem with these cars these days. They're so smart. They won't let you do things like drain your battery, even when you're intending to. So, the perils of having a car studio. I just want to mention that I don't live in my car, for any of you who don't know me. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'll tell you, some of my favorite videos that I've gotten into watching lately are how people trick out their cars and their RVs to live in. I think it's amazing what people do, sometimes out of necessity and sometimes out of just the joy of wanting to be on the road. Anyway, just a hobby of mine. I'm noticing that this is way off. I'm looking at this, that this area of the drawing is actually way farther to the right. So I'm going to just pull that out, because I noticed that this part of his chest just didn't look right and I couldn't figure out why. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to, throw it in a little bit more to the right. And as I said, I'm not really going to be grabbing for my measuring tool all that much, because at this point, it's really just about the drawing in front of me now and making my adjustments and learning. I might actually start my car. It's pretty warm in here, and I want to get some AC going. Not that you needed all that. And now I'll get my lighting back. Look at that. So again, thanks to all of you who are hanging in there while I'm kind of figuring out this YouTube thing. But I do feel like I might have a couple of things to share that might be worthwhile. So we'll see how long I do this. I appreciate it if anybody subscribes to let me know you're out there. Anyway, over here, this part of the stomach area is definitely super dark. It's kind of caving in here, his fabulous abs just going behind this leg. So I'm going to really work on getting, this part to look like it's hiding behind the leg area. I'm also going to get rid of what I did here, where I shortened his butt. And then back here, you see this leg is really quite dark. So I'm going to do that trick that I just mentioned, where you just throw, a quick shadow behind. And it looks like there's a cloth area here, which is a little bit confusing on the model. When you first look at it, you think that that's his leg. Not that I'm critiquing Michelangelo. God forbid. Anyway, so this is a piece of cloth which I'm going to kind of put in here with a sweeping line. And I actually learned a great, I kind of knew that I was doing this anyway, but no other artist had ever put this into words for me before. And I watch a guy named Proko, Proko. He's an amazing designer, but even more than that, an amazing teacher. He's just a great artist. And one thing he said is that it's better to not get a line perfect. It's better to just get a nice loose line. So if you're laboring over a line like this, which is not critical to the figure drawing, just go ahead and do a sweeping line. It won't matter if, my lines don't match exactly what's going on with the cloth area. But of course it will matter if I do that with a figure. So just a really cool piece of advice there from Proko that I'm stealing and putting on my channel. I love that guy. I'd love to meet him someday. He's really cool. I have so many YouTubers I could recommend to people who love to watch art. Another one is Cesar Santos, who's just an amazing oil painter and draftsman. Love watching him. So over here I'm going to kick back this little piece of cloth so it sits behind his leg a little better. I'm going to make this crease a little bit more pronounced. And I'm also noticing that this part of the leg is much darker in the drawing, so I'm going to kick that back too. I try to use these lines in a direction that makes sense when I'm doing the shading in the drawing, but not always. Sometimes I'm just, throwing the lines on there to get a tone, a dark tone, because it's critical for it to be darker, more so than the line quality, because I think the line quality in other areas of the drawing is going to be way more important. So back to his arm muscle, you see how I'm kind of jumping around. Just a great way to sort of stay on top of the whole drawing as you go. And I can hear people next to me parking their cars, and I'm not looking to see if they're looking at what I'm doing. As I mentioned in my other videos, I am working on this YouTube project in my car before I head into work. so that I can be consistent about getting, you know, more videos up there as opposed to making them perfect. So I'm just looking right here where this guy's nose is, and this is a very tiny drawing. So sometimes when you work small, the disadvantage of working small is that it can be challenging to get, you know, the drawing really anatomically correct, especially with the face. So I'm going to try just being a bit vague, you know, with this and just building it up gradually. So I'm looking at this area of his mouth. Not, it's unclear a little bit if he has a beard, but I think maybe he does. So I'm going to throw some shading in. I'm actually a big believer in doing lots of copies of master drawings and just drawings of people that you admire. And as long as you give a shout out, I'm not so worried about Michelangelo thinking that, you know, I'm stealing his artwork. But if you use anybody who's doing artwork right now or, you know, in the last 100 years, you know, you definitely want to credit the people that you're, you know, that are inspiring you to do the artwork that you're doing. It's just real important. I know I would want somebody to do that if they were ever took a piece of original art that I did. I'd be very flattered if they did, but I definitely would want them to say where it came from. So just working on his head a little bit. I think it is time actually for me to take a measurement. I want to make sure that I'm really getting this head in the right proportion to the body. So I'm going from the tip of the nose to the back of the head, and the tip of the nose to the back of the head here. You can see that the head is actually much wider than I thought. So I'm going to give it a little bit extra skull back here. And I'm probably going to kick back some of this detail here, because what's going on in the drawing is that there's a lot of, you know, value back here. So I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit and throw his head into a little bit of shading so that it's not the focal point of the drawing, because it will be a little tough for me to get his face just right. Being so small, I almost really feel like I am gambling without my glasses on here. So I'm just trying to get like the basics here. Some of it I'm adding to the drawing a little bit, not necessarily everything that I'm seeing. And I do love the way he's captured this chin in a dark way. I think that's pretty critical to have it come forward. Even just doing this little bit of shading under the body, where his neck is. Sorry about the shaking camera. I'm not sure why it's shaking. It's probably because I started the car, which maybe I'll turn the car off. I could also be hitting it too. Okay, see if we can steady it. Thanks again for bearing with me on this. I gotta figure out a better setup. So let's see. I'm seeing some area here that really should be kicked back, and so I'm going to throw that in there. And whenever there's a big muscle, you'll hear me say this a lot, you want to have a pretty definable shading right before the muscle actually ends. So it would be right here that I'm talking about. And in fact, anywhere where the body is sort of going to end or disappear, or where the edge of the body is, you want to call attention to the volume just before that happens. I'm going to put in a couple of little rib lines too. I'd love to get fancy and sort of zoom in, but then the problem is the camera. The camera's an issue. So I don't know if zooming in is a good idea. Anyway, hopefully you're watching this maybe while you're trying to fall asleep, and this way, if it's boring as hell, I'll at least help you go to sleep. So maybe I'll even lower my voice, have you relax. So I am noticing a big shadow here that I wasn't really paying attention to, so I'm going to throw that in. Again, using that trick of just kicking it back. You could see that that really made a big difference, or at least I think it did. And then it makes me realize that this really needs to have, you know, some neck definition where it comes up to hold the head. You want to have a strong neck. You don't want to look like this head is just sort of flopping on there. I think already that's helping a lot. I kind of wish I was moving a little faster. I like to keep these videos somewhat short. So I hope I don't have to do a part 3 on this one. Maybe part 3 is I'll just walk you through the final drawing, because there's not too much left to be done on this. Again, I'm still learning the best way to do the YouTube length of filming. I love the way over here it just sort of disappears in his drawing, and so I'm going to try to do that and put his hand in, but in that sort of vague way that is still so beautiful. You know, really, it's learning from the best when you work with master drawings. Why mess around, you know? I remember one of the best projects I ever did when I was at Rhode Island School of Design, which is where I went to college. I was actually in freshman foundation. You know, it was just such an amazing exercise, and that was to choose a master oil painting that you loved and just faithfully copy it. And I chose a John Singer Sargent, who's, in my opinion, one of the best painters that ever lived. And for just strictly for painting. I mean, just amazing. And I learned so much and it was towards the end of my freshman year, my feeling was, wow, I wish I had done a bunch of these even before, you know, going to college. I would have come in with so much more knowledge. But I would have struggled too, because what was great about what the teachers taught was really just materials and just tricks, you know, where it saved us a lot of time to learn. But I'll tell you what I learned copying that was so valuable. So to this day, I still do copies in oil paintings, because it just brings me that much farther ahead every time I do it. And I wish I had time to do it more. So here I'm kind of trying to join the part of the leg that's sort of disappearing a little bit. I'm doing it a little darker than what's in the drawing, but hey, it's my drawing. So sorry, Michelangelo, I'm messing with your stuff. So I do love his line right here. I think it's really cool. And as I said, I'm not fussing with this part of the drawing. It's more about just keeping it loose and making it, you know, getting the idea across. It's not going to be exact, but it doesn't matter. No one's going to look at it and go, whoa, that piece of cloth is really awkward. But if the figure drawing is off, everybody will notice that. So I'm trimming this arm back a little bit. I noticed it was way too beefy, even though this guy has some nice... Are these your pecs? I don't even know what these are. You can tell I'm skipping the gym to do these drawings. Look at the sacrifice I'm making, huh? So anyway, I'm darkening this area here, and I feel like even this main area could just be so much darker. It's like you don't want to believe that it should be that dark, but it is. And again, I'm darkening right before the muscle kind of curves to the area where this part of the muscle disappears. It's really important to really look at that. The shading, you know, just before it disappears into the next area of the drawing, if that makes any sense. Looking at the clavicle area and saying, this could be more defined. So it's starting to come together there. And I love the way this is so dramatic here. I'm going to try to get that a little bit more dramatic in my drawing. And trying to get some of this rib action, and I'm probably going a little heavy with the lines, and sometimes when I do that, then I just go a little heavier with the shading around it. So, because what happens is if you use too many lines right to the edge of your drawing, it can really flatten out your drawing, and it kind of kills the illusion where you don't want people to really stare at it like it's lines, but to really look at it like it's a real figure. So you want to be careful to pay just as much or more attention within your drawing as you do with the edges. So that's super important. Some nice lighting coming into the car, and I'm hoping that it's not killing your view here. So I love these rib lines. Love it, love it, love it. I love what's happening here. I think I have a mistake here with this funny little line there. So I'll get rid of that. I think it's just this part that's super important that comes down. And correcting some values here. Again, paying a lot of attention to just before the edge of the drawing. And I may have made him a little too thin here. We'll know once I pull that away. Yeah, he's starting to look a little deformed, so I'm going to pull him out a little bit. Don't be afraid to correct. Even if you have a beautiful part of your drawing, I'm not saying that this one is, but if you have a beautiful part of your drawing and you just don't want to let it go, I would say just let it go. You've got to fix your mistakes, because if you don't, it doesn't matter how beautiful that drawing is shaded, or, just if you have beautiful line work. If it's incorrect, you're kind of doomed. So it's the same with oil painting too. At some point I'll get back to doing some oil painting videos. It's just easier for me when I'm painting to just take pictures step by step, so that I'm not interrupting my flow the whole time. But we'll see. I'll progress with that, and I'll see where I want to go with that. So I'm really darkening this armpit area because I noticed how defined it is in the original, and I think that will help a lot. And then once I do that, I go, oh, this value right here needs to come way down. So again, it's all about jumping around and correcting things based on the last thing you did. You work on something and then you realize, wow, now I need to tweak this. That's the process. That's what it's all about. I feel like too, this part should be super dark here. And I love how, his drawings go from super dark to, just the white of the paper, and he just such an amazing, amazing, amazing artist. You can learn so much. The other thing I found too is if you look, sometimes in antique bookstores or just used bookstores, you can find some amazing drawing books for, just a couple of bucks. I bought a set and they were about $5 or $6 a piece, but they were an amazing group of master drawing books that I was so excited to stumble on. And I might be using one of those next time. So I kind of don't have the beautiful line work that he has down here on the cloth, which is okay. I'm just trying to do my own thing, but I do want to get a little darker down here near the foot, because I do like the way the foot sort of blends in on his drawing, and I want to make sure I get that. And then, the foot isn't the focal point of the drawing, but I do have to say, if you don't get certain things right on a foot, it can look really awkward. You can see how mine's looking awkward right now, and I'm going to need to put some time into it, because it can really look funky. So unfortunately, the drawing that I'm doing the copy of, there's not a lot of information there for me to take from it. So, and I just want to mention too that, the values around the figure that you're drawing can be just as important to defining the figure as the values within the figure. So really look at that. If you find that something's off on your drawing or you just can't quite capture what it is, take a look at what's around it and see if that's the problem. You know, maybe that's the problem, that it's not the drawing itself, but the area surrounding it. I'm going to kind of steal this cross-hatching that is occurring because I kind of like it here. And might actually continue it a little bit onto the page just to pull this light area out. And then I am going to go in here and see if I'm kind of worried about this part. I feel like I don't really have a grasp on that. Maybe I have one too many humps on his butt. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, this camera's really shaking. I think it worked better when I hooked it to my passenger seat. So on the next video, I promise I will not hook it onto the chair that I'm sitting on, the car seat that I'm sitting on. So I think that's better. I had an extra hump. He had too much junk in his trunk. Yeah. And I feel like too, I've gotten a little bit too defined right there. If you look here, I'm using my kneaded eraser, which is amazing. And just get rid of that. That was kind of distracting. You know, if you make your figures too lumpy because you're trying to capture everything and you're over defining things, you know, you're really going to have the opposite result. It's not going to do you any good. I think I'm going to try to put a little bit of work into here. And you know, it's funny, I didn't notice the extra hump until I was looking over here. And I went, oh, that's joining up with that. And I had that little extra hump there. And that's why it is important to kind of draw the outside of the drawing too, whatever's going on, and not just be so focused on copying the figure. Because the outside can really help you fix mistakes that you never would have seen. So I would encourage everybody to try that if they have an interest in drawing, to really look at, you know, the area around. I do like how he just lets things just drift off. Very cool. I mean, he is the master. I'm going to just define the bottom of his butt a little bit. I happen to like drawing butts. It's good times. Boy, this is really dark on the drawing. I don't know why I didn't see this before. It's funny how stuff just reveals itself. So I'm going to really darken this up. You can see how much of a difference this is going to be to really pull that leg forward. And it might be time for me to switch from this pencil to something a little bit darker. Here's my trusty pencil case. And I always keep a variety here. A 2B is a great one. It's not too dark, but I would never start a drawing with a 2B because it's just too much of a commitment to the to the darkness of it, and it's just, you're not ready to do that until you get the measurements just right. Just working on his face a little bit because he looks a little bit like a creature. I think I've probably defined the under part of his nose just a wee bit too much, so I'm gonna kick that back a little. So it's all about, pushing and pulling and, where you want to put your focus, and it's, it doesn't happen quickly. But what's nice about working on these small drawings is that, it forces you to just get the basics down, because you're not, you're not working on a big piece of paper. So you can't get too nitpicky. I mean, these are quite small. Again, sometimes I break my rule and I get a little too heavy with my line work around the edge of the figure, but I'm okay with using some artist license here. These are my clips, by the way, as I talked about in my first video, and it just gives you a lot more flexibility to have hands free, especially if you need to take a measurement, and it just holds everything and you're not fussing with your book and your notebook. And the nice part is, too, it forces your hand to draw at every angle. You're not flipping the book around, left, right, and, because you feel like you draw weakly, or a little more weak in one area than the other. So in other words, you're strong doing this, but not so strong doing that. And doing it this way will really help you become, more comfortable drawing any shape, any way, eventually. So over here, I'm just kind of cool with leaving this very loose. And I'm seeing here that I have flared up his knee way too much, and that this really needs to be a pretty simple shape. A lot more simple than what I made it. It's funny, I didn't see that at first. So, the tweaking continues. And thanks for your patience while watching, and I'm going to look at wrapping this up, and then I'll post on my Facebook page, Artwork by Mary. Come check me out. I'll post a picture of the final drawing, because I think this video is getting a little long, and it creates problems with uploading. So, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and for hitting the bell alert button to let you know when I've posted another one. And again, I hope you're watching this when you're kind of relaxed and comfortable and not needing a lot of exciting entertainment. I learn a lot by taking my phone to bed with me and just watching other people draw and paint. And it's amazing how much you can absorb doing that. So I hope you got a little bit out of of this drawing, this film. So, boy, it's hard to stop. Just trying to kick this part back, and then I'll post the final. So thanks so much for joining, and I appreciate you joining me in my car. Thanks. Bye. See you next time.